wasn't for race day, cars wouldn't get done. Anyway, we packed up the trailer last night. We headed out here to California. We're at Progress Group. Progress Group is a company that manufactured the suspension that's on our car that we built for FF Battle. And we really haven't had time to test it on the track, but we want to make sure it handles as good as possible. So they're going to help us with the chassis setup. This is going to be kind of interesting, so let's go see how it's done.
Here today, Carter and Brian have come to us with an Integra project that's going to go to FF Battle. It rolled in with a beautiful powertrain, but an unfinished suspension package. So it had some of our coilover offerings, a CS2 street kit with 350-pound fronts and some stiffer 550-pound rears. Well, the car had been swapped, so it went up to 550 pounds in the front to compensate for the weight. He's also running the aerodynamic splitter, which means he's going to have more downforce on the front, so up in spring rate with that. It minimizes the dive on braking, minimizes the body roll. He's increased the level of grip, so we need to come up with the suspension to meet him kind of at the midpoint here. He's not going to an all-out race tire, he's not going to a slick, so we've opted for spring rates that are in a nice mid-range for him in that 550-pound range. If that car was to be set up on slicks, we'd be looking at possibly spring rates as high as 800 to 1,200 pounds per inch. We set our ride heights and moved into measuring each of the suspension settings, camber, caster, and toe. Document that and take a good look at the specs and move into a race setup where we've got a lot of negative camber and very little toe. So we proceeded to align the car and then put it onto our new digital chassis scales where we establish the corner weights of the car. The goal when scaling the car is the diagonal weights of the wheels to be the same. So that the term is that the cross weight of the vehicle is at 50%. That's a good baseline for going to a track day event or going to a road race event when you want the vehicle to behave the same way turning left and turning right.
So we just got back from FF Battle. It was a great event. What'd you think?
You know, I really enjoyed that event. Super Street Continental Tires put on a great event. I'm glad that they bring it back every year and are always changing it. And we're at Cal Speedway this year. Fun track, love the garages. It's always awesome to park inside.
Makes you feel like a pro. But it wasn't without its problems.
Yeah, we broke an axle somewhere between building the car and getting to the track, probably at the dyno possibly, or when we were driving around at a really low ride height on the 15s before we changed tires.
Yeah. Typically when we are going to road race a car, we usually use Honda parts to assemble the axles. I was kind of in a hurry, so we used some aftermarket parts to assemble the axles. That was a mistake. One of the inner joints broke. Luckily for us, we were able to get an axle from Loy Song.
Did you run out of VTEC?
No, fork here. K-series problem, bro.
Unfortunately for him, he broke his vehicle, but that meant he had a car there with an axle we could use. Originally, we sent you out to get an aftermarket axle.
Yes, which we learned the bar was not the same size as the axles we were using, so the inner tripod would not even fit on.
Yeah. So we ripped off an axle off the Loy Song, did a quick rebuild, and got it back together, and actually got out to make a little bit of track time.
In the afternoon, I think we probably got 10 laps and max all together. So that was fun. The other thing that happened there too was the splitter fell. We have quite a large front splitter. We thought we had braced it well enough, but about 100 miles an hour on the front straight, the nose decided to dip down and start bouncing off the asphalt.
It actually sharpened it nicely.
Yeah, now it really hurts when I walk into it, much worse than usual.
And we had a couple of large aluminum brackets that we bolted to the bottom of the car to support it, and even, reinforced, they bent. So unfortunately, we didn't get really a chance to work on the suspension like we wanted to. We wanted to try to do some work with the sway bar, maybe make some different settings. So we didn't get to play with the car quite as much as we wanted to.
Honestly, I didn't even, by maybe the end of my sessions, I was starting to understand where the track went and where the line was for the track. I mean, so we did our best effort to get the car around the track quickly, but it's hard when you barely know where you're going. So we did some splitter support rods, which seems to have solved the problem after driving the car on the freeway a couple times.
We bought some APR support rods, modified them a little bit, and they are doing the trick.
Yeah, they are. They're working really well now. Car nice and rigid. I can stand on the front splitter, and I am a whole lot of man. On the other thing we had a problem which was from the beginning is we're making a lot of power on the dyno. We weren't sure why. We're only about 225 horsepower. Come to find out after the event, the muffler was plugged completely. I assume almost completely shut off because it blew the welds out actually on the can and spewed the packing material all over the rear suspension. I thought I hit a cat at one point.
It was really fuzzy back there. We solved that simply by making kind of a race system. We've got about a 2.5 section of 2.5 inch pipe with a muffler welded to it and then a turn down after that. It's a little bit loud though.
It's a lot of fun when we drive around the neighborhood late at night or firing up in the morning to go to work. The neighbors love me when I do drive it. And the last thing we had too that was probably not helping with our low horsepower numbers for what the motor should have been making is we had fuel problems.
It turns out that at 225 horsepower we were actually approaching 200% duty cycle on the injectors, and that really shouldn't have been the case. We traced the problem down to a tired old fuel pump, and we replaced it with a Walbro.
And new K-Tune fuel system with fuel rail. All the nice AN fittings have really cleaned up the bay nicely.
And basically we switched from a dead-end system to a flow-through system. So we're trying to cover all our bases. We may try to make more horsepower with this car at some point, and that'll make sure we're ready for 500 horsepower or whatever we decide we want to do. We've got the fuel system repaired. We're gonna head back down to the dyno and see what it does.
Yeah, and after that, hopefully another test and tune session so I can start working on the suspension setup a little bit more.
I'm here with Robert from Hush Performance. Robert, your company made this fabulous front end kit that we have on Carter's car. Your kit's kind of unique compared to some of the other kits on the market. Talk about some of the special features you have.
Okay, so one of the key ingredients to our success is bolt-on characteristics. So if we're going to make something, we're going to continue that trend, and being able to bolt on our part is kind of important. So we've integrated mounting frames along with it. Most of the fiberglass front ends available currently are you kind of figured out, which is understandable because there's a lot of stuff going underneath the vehicle and stuff like that, but we're trying to get to those that may not have a fabricator close by who can build the frames that they need. Essentially, this will you pull it out of the box, bolt it on your body, and you're good.
It was actually really easy. I mean, it took us a day, but believe me, I've fabricated before, and usually that's a several day long ordeal.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, coming up with how we were going to bolt it on, again, we were using existing bolt locations, existing threaded pieces on the chassis itself, trying to figure out how we're going to get to them, how functional it will be. I mean, we spent quite a bit of time on this thing.
I noticed that because it's tubular, there's a little bit of play. You can make some adjustments and stuff like that if you need to. Not everybody's car is going to be dead straight. You know what I mean? So things might need to move around a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the stuff that we were discovering early on, and we've already made adjustments for that to try to compensate for that as much as possible. Cars are old, we're 20 plus years old, and we understand that, so the framework is either going to work for you, and if it doesn't, and if it doesn't, you choose not to get the framework, then that's fine because you'd just be right where you would be anyway. We're using Downstar hardware. He's working real well.
That's a really nice touch.
Yeah, so since we're going to have exposed hardware, we might as well look good. So we just kind of reached out to Frank and said, hey, this is what we're going to be doing, and of course he was down for it. So he donated the hardware for this front end, which is gold. The versions that you would get from us is actually aluminum. So that was a special case on this.
We actually kind of gave double duty to the front frame. We actually use it to help mount our splitter so that it supported the splitter. The first time we went out with our splitter, once we got over 100 miles an hour, we actually bent our 3/16 thick aluminum brackets and the splitter dropped down. But we took it out today, did a little testing, didn't move at all. Next test is 120 miles an hour at Gingerman Raceway, so we'll see how it holds up.
It sounds exciting. It's pretty cool that it's actually getting tested in the road race realm. It looks super cool. I mean, we got 18 by 10s in this car. It looks super cool. I don't think people are ready for this.
We have big 285 tires on it, and it's doing a really nice job of covering that.
People in our industry are used to seeing these front ends on drag cars. To see this front end on a road race car kind of changes things. We're kind of creating a genre, if you will, with this road race, hopefully to possibly inspire the street. When we went out to Ibach, he'd come up to me and really liked the front end, was actually saving for the investment, and then he sees the street wheels on the car and he's like, great, now I gotta save up some more money, because now it's become an entire look.
Yeah.
Which is really fun.
Get Koenig, they're less expensive. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I think the car looks fantastic. It got a lot of pictures. People seem really interested in it. It's one of our more popular projects at VTEC Academy. I'm curious to see how it works out. Right here. Today we're doing a little bit of testing here on the DA. We've come out to a little track down in Tucson. It's a go-kart track, but it's actually quite big. We want to check out the tire setup. We're going to try and figure out what tire pressures are going to work for us. We also want to see how our camber settings are and if the tire is heating up evenly across. Also, we're looking to see if anything's rubbing. We've made some improvements to the rear end of the car. We've kind of narrowed a little bit to get a little more clearance with the fender wells. The front, we've raised up the car slightly. We may wind up going with a slightly smaller spacer in order to get the tires a little bit tighter, but we want to see if it rubs the way it is. We'd prefer to have a wider setup. It actually stabilizes the front end a little bit better, and it makes the back end a little bit easier to kick out. Anyway, right now we're doing the tire pressures, getting ready to go out on track and see how it works out.
Yeah, we hear from here, dude, something's up.
Good, fired up. I knew I was gambling, but at the same time I was gambling, I'd also asked Tim to send me the proper tune. He had to find a place to hook up his internet in Thailand, overnight, which was his daytime, in order to get it to us. I should have checked this morning to see if it was in my inbox, but anyway, we were able to get on the public Wi-Fi they have here at the track. So anyway, good. We should be good.
Oh yeah. All right, yeah, I'll take it down the street real fast. Yeah, felt fine. Other than that weird breakup that always has at $5 grand.
Sure did sound like it. No smile on your face? You gotta be serious? There you go.
Just finished up testing. Everything worked more or less the way we wanted it to. One of the problems and reasons we had to test was the width of the tires. We went with a 285 wide tire in order to run in street class. We wanted to make sure we had traction. Using that wide of a tire meant we had to go to an 18-inch wheel, 10-inch wide wheel. We picked Koenig wheels because the Koenig wheels are just super reasonable in price, and they're really lightweight for their size. We priced out some other wheels and stuff at $1,810, and that stuff was, you know, $300 to $1,000 a wheel, and you know, we weren't going to do that. The Koenigs wound up being really reasonable, lightweight, very strong, a really good choice. We were concerned about them rubbing. That's one of the reasons why we went with the Hush Performance front end, was to make sure we had plenty of room up front. That turned out perfectly. There was no rubbing at all. How did it drive?
It drove really well, plenty of front end traction. We have a much narrower rear tire, wheels 18 by 8.5 in the rear with a 235 on it. So the car rotated really well. The front end was planted, but it is a workout. We don't have power steering in the car right now, and the 285s just try and pull you all across the track. It ripped the wheel almost clean out my hands a couple times. So we're definitely gonna be putting power steering on the car, because I was like 4 or 5 laps into it, I was peeling my hands off the wheel. They were so stuck to it. It was just,
Forearms cramping up?
yeah, the whole drive was just sawing at the wheel to keep it straight.
Anyway, back to the shop. Driving the car around for a little bit, we decided obviously to make a bunch of changes. As you know, we've converted the fenders over to a wide body setup so we can put a much bigger front tire on. One of the problems with having a lot of torque is wheel spin, so we want to be able to run a 285. The other thing we did was switch to a 5-lug conversion. The 5-lug allows us to go up to 10 inches wide on a wheel fairly easily, and there's a lot more options for tires, race tires in 17 and 18 inch size rather than in the 15 inch size. Next on our list of improvements was the engine. Driving it around, it hangs down a little bit low. When we first designed this mount kit at Hasport years ago, we put the engine in with hood clearance for the K24. That was our major concern, was to make sure we had clearance for the power steering pump and for the taller engine. We've decided to kind of change our focus a little bit and worry a little bit more about ground clearance. There's a new kit out by K-Tune that allows you to move the power steering pump down low, so that's not an issue as much anymore. Also, we have a new mount at Hasport. We call it a flip mount. It allows us to change the height of the engine just simply by flipping the mount over. So we're going to use those mounts in the kit as well. That's going to allow us to move the engine up about 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches is pretty good. We actually damaged the oil pan hitting a large pothole one time. The splitter on the front of the car is actually going to be low enough that it's going to be below the oil pan now. But more importantly, even if we didn't have that splitter there, the engine's going to be much, much higher. With that mount, you can either mount the engine at the high position on a K20 and clear the hood, or in our case, if you have a K24, you can mount it at the high position and cut away some of the hood skeleton, which unfortunately is going to cause the supercharger to stick out of the hood a little bit. But I think Carter's always kind of had a soft spot in his heart for the old CRX we have with the K24 and the supercharger. In fact, that's the motor that's in the car. He kind of is looking forward to having the motor poke out of the hood a little bit and emulate that car that we did some time ago. Anyway, the process of doing this, the mounts are significantly different. If you look at them side by side, you'll notice that the one that welds in on the passenger side has 2 sets of bolt holes, so you can mount the engine at 2 heights there. You look over on the driver's side one, the left-hand mount, and that's one of the Hasport flip mounts that you can turn it right side up or upside down in order to raise or lower the motor. Then on the rear, there's a new bracket we have back there. Before, we came from underneath the subframe to grab hold of the transmission. And while that was effective and compact and gave us a lot of room behind the motor, it's not the best option because it's not very right-hand drive friendly. Right-hand drive cars actually have the racks reversed, so there's no bolt holes under there to bolt it to. So we came out with a new design that goes back up on top of the subframe, and it will be, like I said, right-hand drive friendly. The whole idea of this car is we're just trying to get it ready for the next FF battle next year. Like we didn't put our best foot forward this time, but the car really didn't have much development. We went from, a few weeks before the event deciding to put a supercharged V16 in to actually putting the supercharged K24 in. And there are a lot of things that go along with that that we just didn't have time to work out. But I think the car is going to be much faster after we get it done with this, and handle a lot better. So I'm looking forward to get it back on the track again.
So you took the Integra out.
It's the most ridiculous thing I've driven maybe in 15 years.
Really?
It was a weird car. I actually really liked the drivetrain. Had a really good power band. I was surprised how it actually, it felt a lot like a simpler car, but it was just so, it was 2 clicks up, you know, it's kind of visceral. The hardest part was that shiny steering wheel and my gloves. I felt like I was trying to crush a pop can holding onto that thing, and it just looked, my hands were aching. It's those are big tires.
Yeah, needs some power steering, doesn't it?
Oh, it sure does. That would help a lot. But the balance was really good. I mean, you said they're 360 treadwear tires.
Yeah, they are.
The grip was better than I thought. And you get the back end stepping out a little bit, but it was super predictable, super catchable, and the wide front end. A couple of times I dipped into the dirt. I thought that was kind of cool. It's so much wider than what I'm used to. My CRX is probably 10 inches narrower, but it's a fast car. on our compounds, that would be a monster, man. A monster.
Yeah, we're looking forward to when we can get on them.
Like shear the hubs off kind of monster.
We are a little worried about that.
It's fast. I think a little bit less weight and a little bit bigger brakes. The brakes, you had said that they can go away if you want them to, and they do. For about 300 horsepower, it's very fast, man.
What do you think about the custom shifter setup so close to the steering wheel? We raised it up a good 4 or 5 inches.
No, I'm used to my real tight solid rod shifter in my D-Series car.
Yeah.
But it's really easy to shift, very close. I like the seat. You know, we're similar size, height-wise and stuff, so like the seating position was great for me.
That's perfect. It doesn't move, so.
No, it worked out well that way. You could feel the inside wheel churning a little bit as we're lifting. Heading, getting into the turn, I could feel it surge just a little bit as it's clawing for grip, the torsion diff.
Yeah.
You lose a little bit inside tire grip, but what a fun car. It was the most handful I've driven in front wheel drive ever.
Wire's got a tiny little radiator. Okay, you just got the track pretty quick. Looks like a 126. Good lap time. Give me your impressions of the car, though. I know it was a little bit of a battle out there.
Yeah, I mean, first time we're running these tires, so we were going through all the motions here as far as what is this car going to do with these tires on. It's been mainly ran with a bit more high performance tire.
Yep.
So running this Continental, more of a street-based tire, kind of floating around, trying to find some grip. I mean, it makes a lot of power. So we're trying to find a bunch of grip with this car right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. These are taller tires than what we're used to, and I think I spaced them out to try to give more room to the chassis, and I think that was a mistake. Obviously, it had some big rubbing going on there. It looked like you took off about 2 inches of the outside of the left front tire.
Yeah, took off a little bit of the outside edge, so we'll be fighting that the rest of the day. But I think we can still pull off a little bit quicker time.
Cool.
Because I ran that time later in our session, so hopefully I get a quick time attack right off the bat.
You opted to run without the power steering in the beginning. Tell me about that.
I ran the power steering off mainly because I wanted to feel what the front end was doing. I mean, you can get a really good indication of what the tires are doing, when they're getting grip, not getting grip. And then really once I did that, I went, okay, let's see how good or bad it is with the power steering. Power steering actually gave me quite a bit of feedback. It made it a whole hell of a lot easier to turn.
You start pushing a little harder there. Tell me about going up the hill there.
Well, the car's kind of floating around, and I kind of know that we're not going to be changing spring rates today, so I'm kind of stuck with what we have set up, and the car's like a little softly sprung and it's hitting bumps. So going up the hill, it actually doesn't have enough spring rate, and it's kind of starting to bottom out a little bit.
Yeah, we got a lot more downforce.
A lot more downforce.
Yeah, and that's probably contributing a lot.
Yeah, and so I've been experimenting going up through turn one of the faster corners around the streets of Willow, to try to see how far I could take it. And I went up and it got a little loose on entry, so instead of just completely doing a 360, I caught it, and then I decided to safely go off the racetrack and come back on.
We're going to do a few things: lower some tire temps, maybe get a little bit more grip, change the spacing on the front end, which hopefully will tighten up the handling a little bit. Give it another try. So we went out one more time with the car. We dropped the front tire pressure a little bit, spaced them in a little bit. Was the handling any better? Was it?
It was better, a lot more stable on corner entry. The spring rate, now that I was able to be even more aggressive, the spring rate reared its ugly head even more. So it was quite a challenge. I mean, we were bottoming things out all over the place. I mean, so far the car's been really fast, and it's...
Oh, you're faster than the V6 was.
Yeah,
that's good.
Almost a second faster than the V6. So yeah, it's definitely a lot faster, and it's a game right now of trying to get the balance going around the track. The brakes work really well. It just takes maybe a little bit less pad, so you can be a little bit more aggressive with your foot instead of depending on the pad material.
Yeah, we were a little concerned with that because of the fact we hadn't put brake ducts on it. We were worried about overheating a less aggressive pad. So we'll probably put brakes on it, go to a less aggressive pad, and then try to sort out the spring rates. So that gives us some good stuff to work on. Maybe we can put one of the race kits, your Rotrex Jackson Racing race kit, for next year.
K-Track kit would be really good on you.
K-Track kit.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent.
Cool, guys.
Thank you very much for coming out.